You know that feeling when you click add to cart because the pictures look sleek, the specs line up on paper, and every review you skim seems to scream perfect for my office? Then the box arrives, you power it up, and the whole thing feels off. The drive bays are a nightmare to access, the OS is more confusing than you expected, or the performance just doesn't match the hype. That gap between promise and reality is why I'm doing this deep dive today, so you can decide if this little HPE ProLiant microserver is actually worth putting on your desk or if it's just another pretty-looking box that will sit half-filled. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's set the scene. This is the HPE ProLiant microserver Gen 10 Plus, aimed at small businesses or power users who need a compact, always an NAS that can also double as a modest application server. It ships with an Intel Xeon E-2224 processor clocked at 3.4 GHz, 32 GB of DDR4 RAM, and 8 TB of raw storage. Though the drives themselves are not pre-installed, you have to slot them in yourself. The software side comes with FreeNAS preloaded, which means you get a full-featured ZFS-based storage platform right out of the box, no Windows licensing costs. Now, who actually benefits from this setup? If you run a boutique design studio, a remote IT consultancy, or you're a tech-savvy hobbyist who wants a home lab that can host VMs, run a small website, and keep backups in a RAID array, the ProLiant microserver hits a sweet spot. The Xeon CPU is a step up from the usual Celeron or Atom you see in consumer NAS units, so you'll notice real headroom when you spin up a few lightweight Docker containers or run a small SQL instance. The 32 GB of RAM isn't overkill for file serving, but it does give you the breathing room to allocate memory to ZFS caching and a couple of virtual machines without swapping. On the flip side, if you're just looking for a plug-and-play file share for a handful of workstations, or you need massive throughput for video editing over the network, you might be better off with a dedicated storage appliance that supports 10 GB out of the box. The microserver only offers a single gigabit Ethernet port, and while you can add a NIC via the PCIe slot, that's an extra purchase and a bit of a configuration hurdle for anyone who isn't comfortable opening the chassis. Let's walk through the actual setup experience because that's where many users trip up. The chassis is a compact, matte black tower that fits nicely on a bookshelf. Opening the front panel is straightforward. You press the latch and the entire side panel slides forward, giving you access to 4 3.5-inch drive bays and a space for two 2.5-inch SSDs. The bays are toolless, you just pull a lever, slide the drive in, and it clicks. In theory, that sounds perfect, but the real world adds a twist. The drive bays sit fairly deep, so you need a bit of elbow room to line up the SATA connectors, and the screws for the SSD trays are tiny Phillips heads that can be easy to lose. If you've ever assembled a PC, you'll know the feeling of a tiny screw rolling under the desk. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a hidden inconvenience that shows up the first time you try to add more storage. Once the drives are in place, powering up the unit boots you directly into the FreeNAS web interface. The UI itself is clean, but the first-time wizard assumes you already know what a ZFS pool is, how to configure devs, and which RAID level makes sense for your use case. If you're a seasoned sysadmin, you'll appreciate the control. You can set up RAIDs 1, RAIDs 2, or even mirror configurations, and enable snapshots for point-in-time recovery. For a less technical user, the learning curve can feel steep. I spent about 20 minutes watching a quick YouTube tutorial just to understand the difference between a mirror and a RAIDs 1 in this context. That's not a huge time sink, but it does mean the device isn't truly turnkey in the way a Synology or QNAP would be. Performance-wise, the Xeon E-2224, while not a powerhouse, handles concurrent file transfers with ease. In a test where I copied a 30 GB folder of mixed media files to the server while simultaneously running a small Nextcloud instance, the network utilization hovered around 85% of the gigabit link without any noticeable latency spikes. The 32 GB of RAM fed ZFS's ARC, adaptive replacement cache, which kept frequently accessed files readily available and reduced disk spin-ups. If you're planning on running a handful of Docker containers, say, a Plex media server, a GitLab instance, and a simple web app, you'll see smooth operation as long as you keep total memory usage under about 24 GB, leaving headroom for the OS itself. Now, let's talk about the hidden trade-offs that often get glossed over in marketing blurbs. First, the power consumption. The MicroServer's 300W power supply is efficient for a server-grade unit, but it